all the topics that I'm spitting. You need to sit back and actually take the time to listen. We living in a new age where mind states are feeble. Kids' attention spans are shorter than Danny DeVito. My beat stole, be banging, be about my business. Bass stays knocking like a Jehovah Witness. Leave them scattering when chattering. The gang of rhyme patterns. I ain't worth challenging. You all need some aspirin. Aspiring to be me, no empires to feed. Just a chosen few that's flowing through. Firing up the weed. Jesus, crazy what the world coming to. I'm here to live it, make music. But y'all is just hanging on a gimmick, huh? Wait a minute, man. Don't get me confused with none of these newbie-ass rappers, man. I know the game be feeling fucked up, but I've been making beats since 95, regardless if I had the right promotion or not. Word up. Hey, yo, I ain't always humble. I ain't always intense. I've had my good and bad days like anyone else, more or less. Probably a lot more than less, or the more of it in a sense. Feel blessed, so I just move forward through the stress. But don't smoke stress. Smoke the bombest weed you ever seen. Cannabis club category, certified Cali Green. Type of bomb that I keep up in my sack. They give a lot of cats anxiety attacks. There's no denying the facts. But enough about the weed, though. I keep it on a need-to-know basis. It's time for me to cut to the chase quick. So download this free LP. Spread it to your friends and family. Even to the little haters mad at me. I got 2 official LPs coming after these. So far, I'm grateful for the love that's coming back to me. Truly appreciate the support, especially my peeps that had my back when I was going in and out of court. But of course, a shout out to all my people. Kept the game alive instead of killing it. Selling out with weak flows, my crew. Anyone that gave an honest point of view. Much respect besides me, man. I do this shit for you, yeah, for you.
I think most girls and boys like to play games. In fact, adults like to play games also. In this game, it's very important to listen to all the instructions. We're going to combine things easily.
Pop, so suspect. Now as my rhyme surpasses, see visions are overpasses. Some choose to overlook it. They should be looking past it. We hope for classics. We over you whack bastards. Soul suspects, man, we fall from the average. People try to act like they shit don't stink. They'll be up shit's creek, plus their ship's gonna sink. Now they knee deep in bullshit with nothing to think. On the brink of dealing with the most unpleasant of things. Time switch up, find ways to humble your strut. Just when you was thinking you was the next runner up, shit out of luck, yo, it's just the way it goes. I ain't gotta stress the rest, are you already?
Book day, guys. Who's excited? I'm excited. What is going on, folks? Microphone's on, camera's on, books are stacked up. I think we're ready to go. I'm gonna go with Wednesday to everybody. Oleg, Daniel, what's going on, fellas? Good to see you. It is Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. Hope everyone's having a good one, that their weeks are going smoothly, and that they're staying safe and all of that fun. Today we have kind of my favorite books. Took like half an hour earlier today to kind of look through my bookshelf, and I tried to grab the art-related books that I kind of reach to the most often for inspiration or reference or whatever it might be. Some of these I've definitely recommended over and over and over again. They're kind of my usual suspects when people ask me for book recommendations. Some of them I probably haven't talked about quite as much. And I think I've organized them in a moderately reasonable way or order to talk about. So with that, I think we can probably just jump right in. And we'll jump right in with the number one book that I think should be required reading for anybody that is communicating visually, basically. Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. Ostensibly, it's obviously talking about comics, but it is really kind of about visual communication, I think, at its heart. Like, there are a lot of things, it's even written in a form, it's a deconstructed comic, basically, about comics. But he talks about a lot of really, really cool stuff about how we interpret things with detail, without detail. For example, like why in comics, this is comic specific, they might use detailed backgrounds to set a definite place, but leave the characters. That's kind of in the shadow, isn't it? I wonder if I can move that light. Let me see if I can move this light a little bit. Well, maybe we'll bounce it more. I don't know if that's doing us any good or not. Let's see if that's any better. That light's not particularly adjustable. I think we can see things. Anyways, he talks about a lot of really, really cool stuff in here that I think has a lot of cool things to learn One of the kind of coolest, and this is specific to comics, but I think it's worth thinking about in your own work, even if you're just making stills. If we look at this panel right up here, we know that from there to the next frame, this dude got murdered brutally with an axe, right? But it wasn't shown, right? We were all complicit in that murder, right? We all had to imagine it. It's called closure. The space in between panels in a comic is called the gutter. But yeah, that's called closure. And I think that any time, let's put it here. Oops. It'd be easier if that was mirrored, but then you wouldn't be able to read anything. I'm going to do my best with this. But anytime you can get your viewer to start imagining something in a story, I feel like you've done a successful job in visual storytelling. And this book is chock full of all kinds of goodness when it comes to that. So if I could recommend one book to everybody, this would be the one, Understanding Comics. I based my entire thesis in grad school more or less around this book, talking about visual storytelling and narrative within the role of architectural design. This book is awesome. Got my little platform here to show things. We'll stack them there, I think. He has 3 books kind of in this form. This one is definitely not as good or interesting as Making Comics, in my opinion. But it does do a couple of really interesting things. He talks about how perspective and composition work a little bit. Oops. I did not figure this out. It would be really good if I had a camera looking down. But I didn't set that up or think about it until just now. You can see that like this leading frame, opening frame, is very, very different from like a more traditional... Oops. Where is it? There it is. Kind of framing, right? And it tells a very different story. He also talks about how... Where does he talk about? A lot of Japanese comics, and it's been taken on more and more from in Western comics, use a technique where they don't show establishing shots in their entirety. They kind of show bits and pieces to make you create the frame in your mind. Lots and lots of good stuff in both of these books. If you're only going to buy one, Understanding Comics is the one to buy. Making Comics has some interesting things that talk specifically about things like composition and the like. So definitely check that out. I think there are links to all the books that I'm going to talk about today. We'll see how well I actually foresaw things. On the topic of composition, I recommend this book all of the time. Framed Ink by Marcos Matu Mestra. I'm going to guess he's Spanish. But he lives in LA. He's a concept artist. And so this, as far as composition goes, is the only book I've ever read talking almost exclusively about composition that I think is incredible. Excuse me. It's geared towards cinematic storytelling. He is a storyboard artist. But it obviously, everything that he talks about and describes applies to still images. And one of the things that I really like is that he kind of emphasizes all throughout this book 2 things, which is, one, how to create like a clear or understandable or effective composition, but also what different compositions do, as in what their affect is. How... Ooh, there was a good one with a train. I wonder if I can find it really quickly. Talking about how composition very much affects how a reader interprets or reacts to an image. And then, obviously, like the mechanical things that actually make that happen. And he also does a good job of breaking down. Composition is one of those things that's so hard to talk about. The workshop that I teach at Maddie every year is about composition. And it's such a hard... Oh, this is just cool. Not what I'm looking for, but this is just rad. So awesome. Composition is a hard thing to talk about. Things like the rule of thirds, I don't think are typically that helpful. They're helpful for like someone doing a snapshot, so to speak. It'll generally make an image more interesting, but for as many examples as that works, coincidentally, here's an example where it's a really cool composition, and it's not anywhere near a third. So the rules don't really get you that far. It's kind of a feel thing, and this book does a wonderful job of talking clearly about it. I can't find the train example that I wanted to show, but that's okay. Oh, this is cool. Here's two very different images, but with effectively the same composition. So cool. So yeah, framed ink, one of my favorites. If you're struggling with composition, this is the one. It's awesome. He has 3 or 4 other books in like the framed series. I think he has 2 called Framed Perspective, which are dealing with drawing perspective, and then one called Framed Drawing Techniques. I have them all, at least for the pictures. I love the way that he draws. I think it's gorgeous. So that's a good one. The next 2 books that I want to recommend, I actually don't have hard copies of. So we have to look at my monitor. The reason I don't have hard copies for them is that a while ago I stopped buying books that didn't have pictures in them, and I instead read them on like a Kindle or on my phone or on a tablet. But this book, Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull from Pixar, he was one of the founders of Pixar, is an amazing book for anyone that's working in a creative industry. The story of Pixar is super interesting. Ed Catmull himself is super interesting. Steve Jobs is in there. There's a bunch of, Lucas is in there. There's a bunch of big players that kind of get mentioned in the telling the story of Pixar. But the thing that's so interesting about the book is that after Toy Story was made, Ed Catmull realized that he had achieved a goal that he had had for years and years and years, which was to make a feature-length animated movie, computer animated movie. And he got really depressed, despite how incredibly successful Toy Story 1 was, and all the Pixar movies have been. He was really depressed because he felt like he kind of achieved his lifelong goal, and what was he going to do with the rest of his life? And it talks about how he then kind of found his next calling as, how do you grow something like Pixar into as big of a company as it is, working with the sums of money, which are huge for feature-length films, and still protect a creative workforce and give them the freedom and safety to take risks. So whether you're working for yourself or you're working for a company or you have staff, there's a lot of really cool stuff in this book just about creative work, I guess you can say. And Ed Catmull's a great writer. It's super entertaining to read, but lots and lots to learn from him. So that book is another. In my book, I have 4 must-reads. This is number 3 of those. The next one is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Chris Voss was an FBI negotiator. I think an FBI negotiator. Yes, FBI. So like hostage negotiation. Very different from business work. Since he's left the FBI and gone on to consult and offer negotiating services, he's written this book that just talks about how to interact with your clients, I guess. Like, not in the creative sense of things, but if you are a freelancer or if you run a small studio and you're uncomfortable talking about money, you're uncomfortable saying no to your clients, how to do it, when to do it, there is a million tidbits of amazing information in this book. I've read a bunch of books on this topic, and this one, for my money, blew them all away. I think if you are handling the money for your firm, or the contracts or the process, any of those things, basically anything to do with a negotiation, which when your client asks for a change that's not within scope, that's a negotiation. Kind of every part of the process is a negotiation in my book. And this book is freaking unbelievable. Read it, listen to it. It's awesome. I listened to the audiobook version of that. It's super duper good. Okay, moving along. Next we have photographers. We'll stop there for a second. So those are my 4 must-reads. Definitely check them out. There's links if you want to find them somewhere down below. I think if they're not there, let me know. Those 4 books are all super awesome for very different reasons. before we move on to some of my more inspirational art books, let's check the chat. Milan said hi to you. Daniel, Oleg, good to see you guys. Massimiliano, happy to have you here. Erica, glad to have you here, and I'm glad that you're excited about books because I'm a huge fan. Lots and lots of books in this place. They make me happy. Jean-Marc, good to see you, my friend. That last post was beautiful. Edmund, Framed Ink, I read it like once a year. Sometimes more frequently, just as a refresher, because the guy knows his stuff. Giovanni, very happy to have you, my friend. Happy to be here. Okay, on to photographers, guys. You guys have heard me reference this guy a bunch, because whenever one asks me what photographer I'm looking at, this is always the first one that comes to mind. His name's Todd Heido. He has a book called Just Houses that I haven't bought yet, and I didn't realize it existed, and I need to buy it. But we're going to look at some of his houses. His landscapes, he is I would describe him, well, here's a good example, a very, very painterly photographer. And as I've said multiple times, I'd like to get more of that into my CG work, and I think anyone who's doing that effectively in photos, there's something to learn from. This is one of my absolute favorites. This kind of reminds me of the image that we made last week. The glowing lights, kind of in the misty dawn. Way different color. He used a beautiful color on that. But he does a lot of stuff like this, and it's incredibly evocative to me. They're kind of always suggest a story of some sort, whether it's about the people or a person or a thing. Love the color palette in this one. I know you guys probably can't fully get that through the webcam, but such is life. But yeah, he goes from like kind of bleak in coloration to bright sometimes, and it's just awesome stuff. And then he also does some of these like kind of strange interiors, which are fun. Yeah. His other books are kind of expensive. This one I think is like $20. Well worth it. So yeah, Todd Heido. Check him out. One of my favorites. This is also a Todd Heido book that I marked something in. Let's see what I marked. Oh. Haha. Can you guys see that? Yes. Oops. Maybe this book's a little bit too big for that. Love this guy's stuff. What's the other one I marked? Ooh. Oop, this is a tough one to show. Yeah, should have figured this camera stuff out before I got out the super big books, huh? Oh well, you kind of have to make do. Beautiful work. One of my favorites. More Todd Heido. Okay, that's going to fall off. We'll balance this somewhere. Okay, next. Maybe we need to go down a notch. Aha, Erwin Olaf. Oh wait, have I not? We've still been looking at my screen, and we weren't supposed to be. Sorry about that, dudes. Because I love Todd Heido so much, I'm going to pull him back out and just show you a couple of things really quickly. Striving for professionalism here at all time. Milan? I'm going to go with Milan. I think Milan sounds right to me. Yeah, thank you for the reminder. This is some of the Todd Heido stuff again. Just to show you, his work is gorgeous. Super duper cool stuff. He does a lot of this stuff in suburbia. He does a lot of portraits. Ooh, that's cool. He, to my knowledge, of the photographers we're going to look at today, he's kind of has like the least staged. He uses like a lot of like dirty lenses and shooting through glass and the like. But he doesn't like overly stage his photographs. Oh, I'm glad we brought this back out. I could look through this all day, every day. And this is just his little book. His work's just so good. Oh, man. I love him. Todd Heido. You guys need to check him out. And like I said, these little books, these little like study books that he makes, I think are like $25. Worth every penny. Super awesome. Okay, next. Erwin Olaf. This dude is another photographer. He does more kind of portraity stuff with a bit of a surreal bent to it, I guess you could say. His bigger books are a little more challenging. And a lot of his stuff is staged or shot in studios and the like. Which to me, I'm more interested from like how did they make it standpoint. I don't have any kind of value judgments on whether or not. We're going to look at Gregory Crewdson here next. And his stuff's super staged. To me, it's all about how it shows up at the end. So that's kind of my feeling on 3D versus post. If it looks good in the end, that's all that matters. But check this out. How freaking cool is this dude? I hope the colors are kind of coming through all right. It's a dark image, but it is a beautiful one. And yeah, he does a lot of these kind of like somber portraits is definitely a thing of his. But his kind of color tones and value control and lighting is just so incredibly well done. Oh, this is cool. This is black and white. Right, everyone's kind of framed just perfectly in all of these. So really careful considerations of composition. So yeah, there's one other one. I should have marked this one too. There's a cool one of his that's in this like, oh, it might be after. It's part of that series. Well, this is just. I don't know a lot about his kind of like work and ethos. I just kind of look at his photography, but there's some weird stuff going on in some of these. Can you guys see that? Super duper cool. There's one other photograph that I kind of figured I would stumble on that I didn't. Let's see if I can find it. Maybe you guys can see some while I'm flipping. Ooh, this one. Really like this image. Everything's kind of pushed to the edges. It kind of has almost like a Mr. Robot feel to me and kind of how uncomfortable this frame is. So cool. And then like a really controlled like use of values. Nothing goes quite to black or to white. Erwin Olaf, super awesome. This book, when I was looking for the links, not available anymore, so you might be able to find it used. Might be a little bit expensive. They did see, and I put a link to it. They have a book coming out. I think it's called I Am, and it's like 400 pages of his work, like going over his whole career. Pre-order it. I did. It's going to be awesome. Like me some Erwin Olaf. Well, Oleg, you are in luck, because next on the list, and this is going to be a book that's going to be a challenge to manage, Gregory Crewdson. Gregory Crewdson, super popular photographer, does these crazy things. I kind of have to, this book is not the biggest book we're going to look at today, but it's the second to biggest. He does these photographs that are all like, well, let me show you one in case you're not familiar with them. Let's see if we can get it all in frame. We kind of can. It's weird. The screen that I'm looking at this on doesn't have this mirrored, so every time I move things, I move it like the opposite way. But yeah, like, where can we see it? All of these things are these giant productions. So whereas the image kind of comes off reading as he just kind of had a model stand on the street and snapped a photograph, he brings in fog machines and cranes and lights. This is not that same photograph, but you can see these are like these giant spotlights to shine this light down. They have fog machine back here, giant crane light structures. I mean, his sets are like the size of, a block. It's absolutely nuts. But his work, again, very painterly, very controlled. Let me find some of my other favorites of his. Very, very controlled. And though they don't look like they were, done with the big production, there's a huge team putting these images together. I've always really liked the composition of this one. Right, you see two of her reflections, and then obviously the girl in the background. And those he builds sets for, if I'm not mistaken. Super cool. This book's a pain to look through because of its size and proportion. I'm trying to get it on the camera, so we're going to stop on Gregory Crutzen there. But he is awesome. Super cool stuff. That's a fun book to look through and to kind of wonder how he makes things. And in that same vein, we get to switch back to my screen. Richard Tushman is mind-blowingly awesome. This is a series called Hopper Meditations. He builds these little maquettes. These rooms are like miniatures, so super tiny, that he photographs, lights and photographs in his studio, and then he, brings in models that he photographs and lights, obviously, to match the initial photograph of the miniature, and then he comps them together in Photoshop, and God knows what else. But these images just blow my mind. Oops. You can definitely get like the sense of like isolation from Edward Hopper's paintings that this came as a motivation for, and I just love the shit out of these. And they're not in a book form yet, though they do travel a decent amount. I want them to come out in a book. I would like to be able to hold these. Or see them in the museum. I've never actually seen them anywhere except for online. So, Richard Tushman, he's the man. This stuff is gorgeous. I could talk about his work probably all day. I love it. Absolutely love it. And then next, let's get the biggest book out of the way. This thing's freaking huge. Philip Lorca de Corsia. This book is expensive. I don't want to say that I recommend buying it unless you want like a coffee table book. It doesn't fit anywhere on my bookshelves. I have to put it up on the top of there. But Philip Lorca de Corsia, if you don't know him, is the man. This is the compilation of his first major series, the one that I think, from my understanding, brought him to notoriety, or big notoriety. And he got an endowment from the National Endowment from the Arts, and he got $50,000. He went out to LA. This was in, don't quote me on this, I want to say the 80s. Is this dated? No, they're not dated. I want to say it was in the 80s. And he would use that money to buy male prostitutes and photograph them. Let's see how we can actually get this in frame without blocking all of the light. The work's super... I'm just going to leave this up here. He actually would set up, first he did everything in motel rooms, and then he started using other places to do the photography. But he would stage the motel room before he went out and looked for the prostitute. I want to say that he would go out, ask them how much it would cost for oral sex, and then he would offer that much money if he could take their picture. And they're just stunning photographs. It goes on and on. This is another one where they feel more candid than they are, as far as the framing and everything else is. But yeah, this giant book, this was a gift from my lovely wife. I forget if it was for my birthday or what. This is like a $200 book. But it's a cool one to kind of sit and cover the whole table with. It's massive. It's the size of my torso. It's huge. But super cool. Oh, did I forget to switch again? Oh, God, the book's too big. This book is huge. If you Google it, you can find most of these pictures online. I'll show you at least one of them nice and big. Without retelling the whole story. Kind of. I mean, you can barely get this book on my desk. I gotta go to the kitchen table to read this one properly. It's awesome. So hopefully now it looks bigger. It's like the length of my arm. It's massive. But super awesome. Okay. Wonder how many times I'll mess up that screen thing going back and forth. Who knows? But we are going back again because I do want to show 2 other series that he did that are really cool. After doing that one, he would set up strobes in New York City, and then with a longer lens, stand a little bit away from where the strobe was set up and take pictures of people walking down the streets. So you get, obviously, this very kind of surreal sense of lighting that feels like a film, but this is just the streets of New York. This one's particularly stunning. And then he also did it just as portraits. Hopefully you guys can see all of these. And because the strobes are so powerful, even though these were taken during the day, for the most part, everything fades to black. This picture, I'm not sure what his religion was, but whatever religion his is, thinks that you can't have your picture taken because part of your soul is in your image. I'm not sure what the whole thing is. This led to like a Supreme Court case that he had to defend his project for. And ultimately they ruled you don't have any right to privacy walking down the streets of New York. So the picture stood. Big court case. It actually affects what we do to some degree, but we're not getting into a copyright discussion. There are rules about what you can and can't do with pictures you take of people on the streets. But for art, it is okay. Worth saying. Okay, switching cameras back to remember. How are we doing on time? Holy shit, it's almost 2 o'clock. That's okay. These ones we can go through a bit quicker. I'm not going to show lots of images from this. This book's sweet. It's less concept art and more behind the scenes of how they actually made this movie look the way that they did. If you haven't seen this movie, definitely watch it. This book I look at all the time because the framing, the lighting, the composition of the images, everything is awesome in this book. I look at this all the time. That stack's going to get tenuous. Booyah! My favorite architectural photographer, Ezra Stoller. He's the man. He was mid-century, mostly on the west or east coast of America. Him and Julius Schulman kind of defined how like the modern architectural period style was seen by the masses, right? Because most people weren't in these cities. We're just consuming these buildings through photographs, and it was Ezra Stoller and Julius Schulman. I tend to like Ezra Stoller a little bit better, but Julius Schulman is also awesome. Ooh, is this the Kindle Art Museum? So one of the nice things about this is that not only is the architectural photography awesome, also his non-architectural photography is awesome. But because Ezra Stoller and Julius Schulman at the time were like the two like biggest architectural photographers, everything in that kind of like middle of the century architecture-wise that was awesome was kind of photographed by these two. There's one image that I should have looked for initially because it's like my favorite of his. In Marin County. We'll give it another couple of seconds. That one's cool. This guy's just the man. But I can't find the image that's in my head. This is why I'm supposed to prepare for these things. Let's get up and give it a quick breeze through. You guys can look whilst I'm doing it. See if I can find it. Ooh. I talk about this one a lot when I talk about composition, particularly with students. You can't compose things without thinking about how they're lit, right? The shadows is what defines this composition. Super cool. Super cool. Ooh. He also did all of the images. Let's find the most iconic one. Ooh, and that's one of the images I was looking for. I think we're almost there. He did the Saarinen, most of the Saarinen photographs for the TWA building. Super rad. And I think, not this one, but I think the next, oh, this is the building. Either way, I love his compositions. They're super duper dynamic. Shot in black and white, super huge, super great control of value. Just beautiful, beautiful work. Whitney Museum, or the old Whitney Museum designed by Brewer in the Upper East Side. Really, any one of these books I could probably just look through and talk about for an hour. But I don't see the one image I wanted to see. Oh well, life will go on. Anyways, Ezra Stoller, super awesome. Check him out. Particularly if you are an ArcViz artist. He's amazing. Julius Schulman. I don't have a book by Julius Schulman, but there is a documentary about him called Visual Acoustics. It's not on Netflix, but it is on Amazon Prime. Probably some other places. He's an amazing dude. Hearing him talk about his work is super interesting. It is 2 hours that's very much worth your time. Julius Schulman, Visual Acoustics. If you're doing architectural visualization, which I assume kind of most of you are, it's a must-watch. Absolutely a must-watch. As is Hugh Ferris. We've talked about him before. We will talk about him again. I love this guy. And this book's like $12. He's just the man. Metropolis of Tomorrow is what he's most known for. His composition, atmosphere, mood. I mean, everything about this dude's awesome. How cool would it be to have one of these in your house? These things were like 8 feet tall. Absolutely love his work in style and composition. This is kind of like, he was doing a lot of these at the beginning of like the skyscraper age in like the 20s or so. And this is his book of like what he expected cities to become. Super awesome. We're going to keep moving on because we have lots to look at. Yeah, we have 17 minutes. We have lots of books to go through. This book is Alex Roman's Third and Seventh. I'm sure that you all know it. I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know. The fact that these images still hold up as well as they do, all these years later, like 10 years later, is amazing. And I think it's a testament less to his technical abilities, though obviously those are formidable, but more towards his like lighting and composition and color, use of color. I'm not going to go through this one. We don't have time. Hopefully he'll reprint it again soon if you don't have it. It's cool to see the film. I'm sure you have all seen it. Seeing him, like how he picks the stills out is also interesting though. Super cool. Moving along. I have all the Assassin's Creed art books. I've never played the game. But the art's amazing. This one's probably the best one if you are thinking about getting one. This is the complete visual history. So it's not necessarily it's the best one if you don't have a whole shelf that's just Assassin's Creed. But this one kind of goes through all of the different games. Every game's set in like a different setting. Let's find some of the city stuff. Ooh, this is cool. This is what, Paris? Old Paris? The thing that I love about video game concept arts so very, very much is that the drawings, the paintings, I guess you'd call them, are very loose. They have a very, even though they're typically done digitally, They have a very painterly style to them. But they tend to be incredible examples of composition and storytelling. Because there's a lot to get across in all of these. So in like pretty much in most arc viz images that I look at, there's no foreground and there's no background. It's just kind of all midground. Whereas in video game art, there's always foreground where you're at, midground where you're going, or background, you know, where you're going on the next level, so to speak. Like a lot of the fundamentals of art that I think are kind of lacking in a lot of the examples of arc viz that I see getting posted around do not exist in video game concept artwork. There's some more cool examples. That's pretty. Color also tends to be done really well. I could do a whole hour on Assassin's Creed books easily. I think I have 6 of them in total. Super awesome. Check it out. Moving along. One of my heroes. This is a threefer. This will keep us moving. The Structura books by Sparth. He is the head of Halo's visual development, the video game Halo. And these are the books he puts out of like his personal work. Let's find a particularly awesome example. His sketches are even looser, or tend to be even looser. Oops, sorry about that on the microphone. Tend to be even looser than the Assassin's Creed stuff, especially when it's his personal work. And kind of in like a Cezanne way, the more simple an image is, if it still conveys kind of the point, the more I like it. More abstraction, the better. Super cool stuff. I don't really have a recommendation specifically out of these 3. They do kind of change in style. You can see this is Structura 1. Very painterly. And by the end of Structura 3, he was starting to play with like very geometric stuff in his free time. Super geometric. And drawing mostly with a lasso tool, from my understanding. So yeah, super cool stuff. Sparth is my hero. So yeah, for composition, lighting, color, mood, stories, concept art is where it's at. Okay, guys. Does anyone know Francois Schouten or Schweten? I'm not sure. I think he was Belgian. This book's not available, which is a bummer. I didn't pay a ton of money for it, but I looked online before this, and it's like used. It's like $170 now. But this book, Francois Schouten did a bunch of comics with a guy named Benoit Peters, I believe is his name. And the thing that I love so much about his work is the architecture in it and how he portrays it. His sense of scale is just freaking amazing. And they tend to be pretty cool scenes as well. That's a train. But yeah, this book is just an example of like work from across all of the things he's done. That's a drawing or picture. He did this thing called the Cities Fantastique, I believe, where he did all these big cityscapes. Let me see if I can find some of the examples in here. I mean, just so freaking cool. I absolutely love it. So yeah, I love kind of his imagination, but also his ability to portray scale in cities, buildings, etc. Book of City. Oh, that's cool too. And I did see that another book's coming out about him that's longer and not that expensive. I put a link to it. It's not out yet, but I pre-ordered it because the more shooting, the better. He also has a book called The Leaning Girl, which is quite beautiful. Actually, I'll grab that. Let's grab it. Here's one of the translated Cities of the Fantastique. And let's see if I can find a cool frame that talks more about... Ooh, that's kind of crazy. And that's cool. So we'll look at those two. That's kind of the opening page. And... how cool is that? Freaking rad. Super beautiful. This is a series, so there are lots of them, from my understanding. And then this one's also really cool. It's about a girl who has different gravity than everyone else. And this is done in like an etched style, which is really rad. So yeah, anything you can find by Francois Schwitten, love that guy. I'm gonna skip this book altogether. This is a book from an exhibition that was in Paris. It's in French. I can't read it. Even though the exhibit was translated, they did not decide to do that for the book. But it's basically a book of how cities have been portrayed in architecture, or excuse me, in comics and other visual formats. So, you know, Little Nemo. I'm not sure which one this is. There's some Mies van der Rohe in here. There's a bunch of cool stuff. And it's just cities being portrayed in very different visual mediums. It's a cool book. I don't know what it actually says. Moving along. The Art of Pixar. Did I have a label on the front? Maybe this is supposed to be in a dust jacket. I don't know. Let me check. Do I have any comments to catch up on? Check Gabriel Basilico. If I like black and white. I do like black and white. I will check him out after this talk. Nitin, thank you. Glad you're joining it. David, good to see ya. I didn't forget the screen again. That was old. Yeah, Khaled, 3rd and the 7th is and will always be amazing. Clark, good to see you, my friend. Thank you for stopping by. Giovanni, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I agree. Everything I'm showing you today, I think is amazing. Bricks and Balloons. I have not seen Bricks and Balloons. I'm going to check that out. Thank you for the recommendation, Edmund. We'll just go with Edmund. Art of God of War, Luca. I was actually looking at that on Amazon last night, and I will check back in once I have it in my hands. Okay, moving along. Art of Pixar. This book's super cool. They do a lot of things like this, which they break down their entire movies into like a color script. And it's always done by different artists, it seems like. And so they're done in very different styles to kind of lay out the colors of a story. And they put these on these giant walls to look at like the overall coloration that they're going for all throughout the movies. So you see some really cool things kind of looking at how they control color across, you know, an hour to 2 hours of film. But then, they have a lot of color scripts. Don't know how many of them you can see. Every time you see these little images, these are like color scripts. But, when do those end? Here we go. Their concept art is cool because the style is kind of all over the place. Obviously, everyone at Pixar and that team is an amazing set of storytellers. And this is kind of, you know, how they get their ideas across in the initial phase of things. But the style is just like all over the place. So super inspirational, super interesting. A lot to learn from the masters, I feel like, in these books. Ooh, that's cool. Check out this picture from Up. Concept drawing from Up. Fucking gorgeous. Super awesome. Giovanni, yes, you must have missed it at the very beginning. That's one of my must-reads. I think I read it probably once a year. Creativity Inc. is amazing. I think everyone should read it. Okay. Coming down the home stretch. Boom. My favorite anime, at least from a drawing standpoint. This book used to only be available in these little books like this big. I have a couple of them. They were super expensive and hard to find. Finally, they got translated. This guy, I'm not going to get into the whole story of Blam. He basically wrote the story as he was drawing this. and it's this weird, cool cyber future world. Pretty dystopian. But his drawings are just fucking stunning, and there's 6 of these, I think, in total, and they're all stunning. Let's see which one I marked here. Oh. Since I'm assuming most of you, like myself, do a lot of architecture, how cool is that spread, right? Different shots of the same space. I love this dude. Oops. Super awesome. And these new trade books that I think Vertical put out, not super expensive. They're bigger, and you get all of the art. Some of the translation, I feel like they bought the rights to the story, but not to the translation. There's some weird translation, but it's mostly silent anyways. Super awesome. Continuing with comic stuff. The Arrival by Sean Tan. This thing won a bunch of awards. It's drawn, again, beautifully. Absolutely beautifully. And the whole story is told in pictures, no words. So, if you're trying to figure out visual storytelling, here's a great example of how to do it well. And just, there's a quality to his drawings that is just stunning. Super awesome. Definitely check it out. Good book, good story. Worth your time. We talked about this guy yesterday or 2 days ago. Excuse me. When we came up with the idea of some of my favorite books. And it's awesome. This is Pascal Campion. You can follow his Instagram for all of these. The book, I just like, when it comes to art, I really like having the book to look at. I feel like I can look at it more seriously when I can actually see it on a page. But his work's like super kind of rough and I don't want to call it cartoony or sketchy. It kind of lives somewhere in between. But within that style, his sense of light is really beautifully conveyed, as well as story. He does a really good job of. So yeah, if you want the book, this is the book. But at very least, you should follow his Instagram. You get a little kind of hit of awesome every day. And it blows my mind that this is like a 20-minute exercise for him, or 40-minute exercise. They're cute and sweet and just beautifully done. Definitely check it out. I guess I should flip through things this way so you guys can kind of see what I'm flipping through. If I turn the camera horizontally, I could have done this the whole time. That would have been the way to do it. Either way, too late in the game to figure it out now. This is a super cool book, lots of inspiration. I wish he had done the text much more subtly, but you know, what do you get? Self-publishing, lots of cool artwork. I will forgive him. As though he was waiting for my forgiveness. Super awesome. Pascal Campion. Okay. All right, we are almost done here, folks. This book, I don't know if it's still available. I tried to go find his website. It took me to a bunch of weird stuff. I did link the video that this comes from, or that most of these drawings come from. Where's the Thought of You drawings? He animated a video to a Weepy song, and it's just gorgeous. I've been telling you guys that I've been doing a lot of kind of learning how to draw people, and I particularly love his style of like gesture drawing. I think it's incredibly beautiful. I can't do anything that even would be indicative of him, but maybe someday. That's why we practice, right? But yeah, his stuff is just so cool. I'm gonna flip through a bit more. Yeah, he was an animation VFX artist, and now he teaches and then does personal projects. Lots of really cool stuff. I've been looking at him a lot for reference for people learning how to draw. Another one of my favorite, like, how to draw people. This isn't about how to draw people, but this is Derek Hess. He does a lot of like heavy metal posters is kind of what he's most known for. He's recently become an advocate kind of for mental health and the like. But his art is just gorgeous. And let's just kind of, I know this is sideways, but we'll just kind of flip through. I love his style. And again, it's like, it's kind of that same theme that I get through a lot, is that he's communicating an incredible amount, even though it's kind of all a sketchy mess. A beautiful mess. Hot, beautiful mess. So yeah, really, really, really like Derek Hess. He's been one of my favorites. He might be like the longest standing artistic inspiration that I have. I got into him in college when I was mostly reading philosophy. Super awesome stuff though. So this is Derek Hess, black, white, and red all over. He has another one called Black Line, White Lie that is like all people drawings. Well, look at that. 2 o'clock. We got through my stack of books. Oh, no. We have one more. Quick one. People drawings. Scotty Young, an amazing cartoon artist. And these are what his daily doodles look like. They're hilarious, A. And B, he's got a really cool style. I think. For me. Love this dude. So yeah, those are all the books that I prepared. Hopefully there are some new ones in there for you. I did pull up a couple last-second websites. Let's transition back to that screen. Of artists that I don't have books for, or they don't have books for, but who I'm finding particularly inspiring at this moment. This kind of stack was like, that's like my best of. Like a year from now, those will probably still be in the books that are inspiring me. Because they were as of last year. Most of those books I bought a while ago. Right now, I'm looking at this artist, Joseph Zbukvic. Joseph Zbukvic, I'm going to go with. Especially with like my recent struggles with color and trying to learn color. We're working on it, painting color anyways. He does watercolors that are mostly gray. Like if you were to actually like sample these, they're mostly actually grays, but they come out looking very colorful. Big shout out to Venice. I love that city. Hope that they're doing okay. But the colors that he gets out of these are just, well, this one's okay. This one doesn't really make my point. Still beautiful, and that's my favorite church in Venice. But yeah, his work is just stunning to me. Overall stunning, but particularly love his color. So I'm going to try to figure that out. Ian McHugh is like a constant source of inspiration if you don't know him. I haven't seen Art of Sid Mead, John Mark, but I will. Thank you for the recommendation. Thank you for stopping by. We'll see you soon. Ian McHugh, just awesome. Really cool stuff. I love it. Very Lebbeus Woods inspired. And then Martin Deschambault, who actually was a former Assassin's Creed artist. Big surprise, right? He has some cool tutorials on YouTube as well about his process that I've been following. But he's just got beautiful sense of color. You can see this is probably from Assassin's Creed. Yeah. Origins. Absolutely love his work. And then my buddy Thomas. Oh, and this is why I had his here. Thomas Dubois, my good friend, who is the man, is making a whole bunch of crazy cool city stuff for a new project. I don't know what the new project is, but I'm excited about it. Of like people that I know, he is inspiring me the most. And I am judging Fabio's competition with him this Sunday. So I thought that this would be a good place to stop. If you don't know Thomas's work, you absolutely positively should. What with this guy? How do we go big screen? Again, very painterly and beautiful, even when it's done with 3D. So, with that, I think we're done for today. And I think Fabio's live with the winners on his channel from last week. That was a lot of fun and a giant mess of judging that we all enjoyed. And he's doing it again this week. So if you guys are looking for a challenge, do some, I think it's an Apple. It's a Macintosh computer. We're going to be judging it. It's going to be me, Jason, Fabio, and Thomas Dubois. So it's going to be awesome. Guys that are just stopping by, and I'm just seeing your names now, thank you for being here. Do you know Roberto Ferri? I do not, but I will check him out as well. I appreciate the recommendation. I'm looking forward to it. Chinaka Sarkot, thank you guys for being here. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm going to head over and see what Fabio is getting up to with the winners from last week. I'm sure it'll be fun. Tomorrow we have Patrick from Alt Shift that we're going to have a conversation about daily art and creating art and staying creative. It's going to be awesome. Oleg, that's a great question. Let's get on Chop. We'll get Chop back on this, at very least. He was here 2 weeks ago, if you didn't see it. If you didn't see that, we had one of those. We'll get him back on. Until then, guys, be well. Hope you guys enjoyed some books. If you have any other comments or things that you think I should read, leave them in the comments below. I love recommendations, particularly for art books and pretty things to look at. But I hope you guys like this. I hope you guys saw some new work. And I will see you tomorrow with Patrick from Alt Shift. Thank you guys for hanging out. Talk to you soon.